Welcome to a TMMI video presentation. Today we'll be talking about Proficy Historian and the Excel Add-In. Our objectives are to configure the Excel Add-In after installation, to demonstrate usage of the Excel Add-In for querying tags and generating current value, raw, and calculated value queries, with the assumptions of using Standard Historian Edition version 6.0 and Microsoft Excel 2010. In front of us we have a Proficy Historian environment set up. I'm showing you a Proficy Historian administrator that's showing a running system with a number of different collectors generating some data, and from this we'll be generating some reports from Excel. Alright, so let's fire up Excel down here in our toolbar, and if we maximize that here, what you'll notice is, first of all, I don't have any historian toolbars or anything here. If I go in through the File menu and go down through Options and then into Add-ins and then hit Go, you'll notice the Historian Add-in and the Historian Add-in Helper. Okay, if I hit OK on that, then you'll notice I have the Proficy Historian ribbon and such up here ready to go. Okay, so let's build some queries. First thing we want to do is we want to go through and check some options. You should do this anytime that you add this to a system, the add-in. Go to the Options menu. One thing you'll notice is, generally speaking, what I do is I leave all of these settings at their defaults. There really isn't a reason to change any of these out of the box. One thing, though, that you do want to check, though, is, first of all, the default server section. You want to check and make sure that the historian server or servers that you'll be communicating with are listed here. You always have to have one as your default, and you do need to be able to connect to them in order to add them to this list. So you can't add them offline and then validate them later. You actually have to go in and make sure they can connect before it'll add it to the list permanently. All right. So anyway, my server is listed here, so I'm in good shape. The other thing is this little checkbox here called Connect at Startup. This is enabled on installation, and basically what this means is when I start up Excel, I want it to make a connection to Historian, basically making me ready to execute a query. That's fine. The only thing to realize about that is that it does consume a historian cal when you make that connection, and you are making that connection no matter what you're doing with Excel on this local machine. So if you're using it for something completely different and unrelated to historian, it's still going to be consuming that cal the entire time. So I tell people to uncheck that and hit save. What this does is it means I don't want a connection at startup, but what it still allows is that when I do a query, it will grab a connection at that point, execute the query, then drop the connection. Okay? All right, so with that in place, let's build some queries. So off to the right here, you can see we've got a number of different queries for tags, different sampling modes for current values, raw data, calculated data, filtered data, and even alarm and events. So we're going to be going through a few of these here and just kind of giving you a sense for how this all works. Okay, so if you remember back to maybe some historian training that you had, whenever we do a query from historian, there's pieces of information we need to have. One of them is, what's the tag name of what it is that I want to query? So if we go to tags, this allows us to find those tag names. And this dialog here actually has several different uses, but at the simplest level, if we just highlight that I want the tag name, choose selected tags, not a formula. We'll come back to that here in a minute. It's going to default to my default historian server, so I'm going to leave that as is. And if I just hit search, it pops open another window where I can put in some more criteria, but basically if I hit search again, it will go and give me a list of all the different historian tags that I have in my system. Okay. So I'm going to go down here and choose one of my favorite tags, sign 1% noise. I'm going to move it over into the selected column. I'm going to hit OK. And basically, now what I do is I choose, all right, what is it about that tag that I want outputted onto my spreadsheet? Obviously, the tag name is what I'm after, but just so you know, all the other different properties of that tag are available through this nice three-line scrolling text window here. So if there's other properties you're interested in, you can grab those as well. In our case, we're mainly just interested in the tag name. All right. The output range is where I specify where I want that value to go. And so I'm going to steer this to cell B3. And if I hit enter, you can see that it's referenced that sheet name and also that cell on that sheet. If I hit OK, you'll notice that what it outputs is the value of that tag name at that point. And you'll also notice that it puts a heading on top of it as well. The heading is because if we go back to options, we have header labels enabled here. And it's going to paste them in as it's able. If I did have this output cell up at A1 or B1, it would have given me, popped up a warning message saying, there's not enough room, but it still would have executed the query for me. All right, so I've got a tag name heading and a tag name. Now let's see if we can get some information on that tag, some data from that tag. So the simplest query to do is the current value query. So this is going to go out and just query the historian and return the most recent value of data that was logged to the historian for that tag. So if I click on that, you'll notice I'm getting a warning here. It's just because my cursor location is over the top of some cells that have information in it. We'll worry about that here in a minute. Very simple dialog. Basically, again, you have your server, historian server, the tag names field, so you can specify one or more tag names here that you want the current value for. So one of the tricks with using the Excel add-in is that I could go in here and type in, sign 1% noise if I wanted to. I could hard code it in there, but the easier way to do this and the more powerful way to do this is to hit the reference button and just click on the cell and have that cell reference in there. Okay, and I'll give an example of how powerful that is here in a minute. We'll skip over the criteria string for a minute. And basically what I want to grab for this tag is I want to grab the timestamp value and the quality of the data, again, that was last logged for this tag. All right. The output location, I want it to be right next to this. I want it to be 3 more columns with headings across the top. And if it is going to give me my output orientation in columns starting at cell C3. So if I hit OK, you'll notice that it does execute the query and it does drop those 3 different values in here for me. And I can go in here and do a little bit of cleanup. And I can even go in here and do a little formatting on the number if I want to. But you can see that, in fact, at 710, the last value that was logged was 210.74. Okay, so this query executed as soon as I dropped it on the sheet. All right. What are the other situations where this query executes? Well, if I click on these cells, you'll notice that there's a function that's being displayed up here. And no matter what cell I click on, this function is the same. All right. These 3 cells are combined into what's called in Excel an array, which means they're bound together, they're grouped together into a function call or a structure called an array. And this function call, IHQueryData, is the historian means of querying Historian and populating those cells with information. Okay, so how these cells update is basically based on whenever a few things happen. Number one, if any of the input parameters to this function are modified. Okay. Another way is if I hit the F9 key, which is the recalculation key in Excel, that will go out and force anything on the page to recalculate, including that query. Okay, you can see it's kind of updating here every second or so. The other way is when you first open the spreadsheet, it will also execute then as well. All right, you can kind of get a sense for maybe what some of these parameters might be. A better way to do that is if you click on this Insert Function button, and this will actually bring up each one of these parameters as a separate line item here. And from the example and from the name of the field, you can infer even better what some of these different pieces are and what they're for. Okay, so obviously the tag name is B3, and of course that's pointing to my cell B3. Okay, so one thing I could do to fire this query would be to change my tag name. So let's say I wanted to look at the 5% noise tag. I could execute that. You'll notice that it fires to an updated timestamp, a value, quality good. I could change this back to 1%. It'll execute again, return a value back to me, and so on. Okay? So pretty powerful in what it does, and how that returns to me. Okay? Fairly straightforward. All right, let's get a little more interesting here. One of the cool things you can do with the tags query is, in addition to just getting static tags, you can also use it for generating a dynamic list of tags. And this can be very, very powerful when it comes to building tabular output and building kind of a customizable user interface. So let's say we wanted to give the user the ability to maybe type in on Excel, maybe a filter, or maybe select a filter from a combo box. And from that filter, it would populate a list of tags down below it, and maybe we could see the current values of those tags. All right, so let's kind of lay this out. What we're going to do here is we're actually going to have a place here where we're going to have an input where they can input a filter, part of a string. That's going to, again, filter our tags. And then let's say we have about 20 rows down here of places where we actually have the tag name listed as a result of that filter that's being entered in there. All right. The way we can do this is if we go to tags, and in the tag mask area, what we actually do is we reference that particular tag mask cell. Okay. And we want to make sure the output is a formula, because we're going to be generating a formula output of tag names. The output that we want is a tag name, and the output range that we want this put into is these here. Okay, we want to do about 20 rows. Okay, so that'll give us the output there, and we'll just go ahead and hit OK. Not sure about that error message, but you'll see that down below here we actually did get a list of tag names. We don't have a filter in here, so it's just giving us the first 20 tag names that it runs into. Okay, let's try out the filter. So if I go up here and if I type in maybe I want to look at everything with a percent in it. So I do star, percent, star, enter. You can see that it's going to bring up any tag name that has a percent sign in it. Okay. What if I wanted tags that had the word sim as their prefix? Then it would bring up my first 20 simulation tags. Okay. So, and this is a field I'm typing into. You can also make this a combo box, maybe with predefined filters. That's, developing combo boxes and all that's a fairly easy thing to do in Excel. but something we're not going to cover in this video. All right, so now that we have this, let's add some current values to this. Let's say, all right, depending on what I choose, I want to see the current value. So for tag names, we choose the entire list here of tag names. We're going to choose that entire range. And because this field says names in paren, that means you can give it a range of tag names to use there. All right. We're going to choose timestamp value quality. And for output, we want our output to start right here. Our output is going to be in columns, just like it is above there. And because it knows that the tag names, it knows how many tag names, it knows how many rows to give us. So that's actually all we have to specify is that upper left box in our output array that it's going to generate. Okay, so if I hit OK, it goes and executes the query, and you can see we pretty much got what we expected here. I'm going to do a little bit of formatting just because I'm the way I am. And we can do a little column adjustments here, and you can see that we got timestamp data for all of this the very last time it was logged. You can see that one of our tags looks like is only logged on the half hour, so that's the most recent value for that particular tag. Okay, let's go up here and change our filter. So I'm going to go back up here and change this to my percent filter, and you can see that only my percent tags come through. And for one of them, I don't have any data apparently, so it's just showing me a quality of bad for that one. Okay, let's go up here and change this to what else? Let's maybe put in string, not strong, string. And you can see that I've got some string tags in here that look like they all have the same value in them. So, and if I remove the filter completely, it's just going to give me the first 20 tags. It looks like some of these here I don't have any values logged yet for them, and so on. Looks like I'm making beer here somewhere. So anyway, but you can see how that can be a pretty powerful interface for just kind of a quick and dirty, you know, give them some sort of interactivity with the spreadsheet as far as, and not having to remember tag names. They can pick from a list. Okay, moving on, let's now move past the current value query, and let's now look at some historical data. Let's start with the raw data query. The raw data query is the first query that we look at that's going to give us just a raw data dump for a tag name. Okay, and I emphasize tag name because you can only do this for one tag at a time. In fact, the field for tag name is singular, so you can only do this one tag at a time. All right, so you're specifying tag name. You're going to specify what output from that tag that you want. The big thing here is what's the time criteria, and you can do this a few different ways. You can say I want to go from a start time to an end time and give me all the raw values in between. I can also go from a start time and give me the next X number of values, or I can go in the reverse direction where I can pick an end time and say give me the previous Y number of values. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stick with the latter, and I'm actually going to go up here and choose as my tag name this sign 1% noise here. I'm just going to reference that cell. I'm going to build it over here on the side. I'm going to do by number backward, and I'm going to do 25 records, and I'm going to do it before time. I'm going to actually pick this as my timestamp because I know this is being logged every second, so this is going to give me pretty much the current time for that. And I want timestamp value and quality as well. All right. I'm going to go up here and choose this as my cell. It knows I want 3 columns. It knows I want 25 records. If I hit OK, it gave me what I asked for as far as timestamp value quality. You're saying that doesn't look like a timestamp. Well, it actually is. It's actually the number of days since January 1, 1970, which is Unix, the uh, day zero of Unix time. All right. So the way we convert this to look like a regular date time that we care about is first of all, let's go in here and let's format these and clean these up a little bit. But this column here, what we're going to do is go to Format Cells, and you can go to Date Time and use these as the beginnings of formatting a custom thing. Under Custom, though, usually there's some that are built already for you, and I've got one down here that I use a lot that has everything down to the seconds, and so that's what I'm going to choose, is that particular one. So if I hit F9, what this is showing me is the last 25 seconds of data for sine 1% noise in a descending order, going back in time. And so if you hit F9 on this and keep hitting F9, you'll notice that values are kind of moving down the screen as they go further back in time off the most 25 recent records. Okay, so this is querying raw data from Historian and just displaying that for you on the page. Again, if I click on any of these cells, you'll notice that I have this function in here, and you'll notice that as I click around in this function, none of this is changing. This is all part of an array. If I try to go in here and type and hit enter, this is actually Excel. Not going to let me do that because the way that this formula is inputted into Excel is through an array structure. Okay. All right. The last thing I want to show you is the calculated data query. The raw data query is great for looking at raw data, for looking at, am I getting the values I expected, and that sort of thing. From a reporting standpoint, though, or analysis standpoint, the calculated data query is much, much more powerful. Reason being is because you can take advantage of the sampling modes that are available in Historian. Okay, calculated data query and filter data query, which is a little more complex version of it. They're gonna return data to you, a historical data set to you, but they allow you to do math on the data before it's returned. So it's a very, very powerful tool that you'll see here in a minute. The first thing I want to do is get some water. So basically what I want to do here is I want to sit down and do a query of maybe 3 different tags that's going to return to me 5-minute averages for those tags for the last 2 hours. Okay, so let's kind of lay out what we want here. What I'm going to do over here is first of all specify my tag names. So I'm going to use kind of my favorite sine 1% noise here is kind of my template. And I'm just going to go in and change some of these tags to reflect just different variations in that data. Okay, so these are my column headings. Okay, this is going to be my time column. My M is going to be where my timestamp is going to be. What I want to input over here though is my timestamp, my start time and end time for this whole query. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to use a couple of relative functions that are built into Historian that are very powerful to use. So one of them is a function called now. And what now does is it returns the timestamp of right now. And I'm actually going to go up here and format these cells and specify them the same way, let's see here, that I did these other ones here. I want to see down to the seconds level. So let's just do a little cleanup here. All right. So this is now, and if I hit F9, that's going to update to, what's the current time right now, okay? That's going to be my end time for my query. The start time, I want it to be 2 hours ago. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to reference, I'm going to put it in a formula here, and I'm going to reference the end time, and what I'm going to subtract from that is 2 hours. Well, a day is equal to the value of 1. An hour then would be 1 divided by 24. So 2 hours would be 2 divided by 24. Okay? So you can see that it is in fact calculating a 2-hour window there. Okay? The nice thing about this is if all I want to see when I bring this spreadsheet up is the previous 2 hours, I don't have to type in anything. It's going to automatically do that for me whenever I execute this spreadsheet. Okay? That's where the value of a function like now is really, really powerful. Okay? There's also functions out there that align it more to a day level. So if I wanted it to go from midnight to midnight, I can use one called today, and you can see what that does is it makes it midnight today. And so I could actually say, if I wanted to go back a week, I could say take today and subtract 7 from it, and it would give me a week ago. All right, and that would always give me the most recent completed 7 days. Okay, so let's change this back to what we had before. We'll call this now again. All right, so now we've got 2 hours here. And what we're going to do underneath here is we're going to put in timestamp and values for these tags for this time period. All right, so we'll go to bring up our calculated data query. Our tag names are going to be these 3 columns. Our start time is going to be here. Our end time is going to be here. Our query, we're going to ignore the query criteria string. We're going to do a calculated sampling. We're going to do an average. And we want our interval to be every 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes we want it to do a calculation of all the raw data leading up to that the end of that 5-minute interval. Okay, and the output that we want is timestamp and value. We actually only want 1 timestamp and we want 3 values. So we'll kind of see how this is going to work. But basically, I'm going to choose that. I know I need 24 records, 12 per hour. And so if I hit enter and hit OK, looks like it's doing what I wanted. Again, do a little bit of formatting here, come down here, clean that up a little bit. And if I hit F9, what you'll notice here is that, yes, my start time is 17:29, but the end of the first 5-minute interval of data is actually 5 minutes later. So this does include 5 minutes of data going all the way back to 17:29. And this is the average of sine 1% noise for that entire 5 minutes. So, and this is 1 second data, as we know over here. So this is 60 samples a minute times 5. That's 300 samples of data for each one of these that it's calculating here. And we're doing the same thing for 5% noise and 20% noise. Okay? And we're doing that. You'll notice that it's aligned perfectly every 5 minutes for that 2-hour window. Okay? And if I hit F9, it goes out and recalculates it. And if you think about it, it's quite a bit of data processing that it's doing because you have 300 values per each one of these. 900 values per row. You've got 24 rows. Yeah, that's up there, and it's doing it pretty darn quickly. So typically, what this type of query can be used for is if you wanted to do like a weekly report with hourly averages, or maybe a monthly report with hourly or daily calculations. calculated data query is very, very powerful at doing that. Okay? So this is just a very, very quick and dirty example of using the Excel add-in. One thing to always look at too whenever you're using the Excel add-in is that there are examples that come with the product. And if I zoom in on this a little bit here, there is a statistical analysis sample that comes with. There also are other ones. There is a batch report sample. And there's also another one called a daily report sample. Okay. These are reports that come with the product. But basically what they're all about is giving you a very easy way to show you how to do reports without having to go through and have to build everything just to see output. These are designed to automatically use existing tags, and in fact if you use the simulation tags that come with the simulation collector, they will automatically populate data in here. So I can go in here and choose a quote-unquote batch, and then this is going to go and return for me data for that batch, depending on which one I choose. Each one of these is a 30-minute window. So pretty cool stuff. Our key takeaways are: under Options, uncheck the Connect at Startup box so connections are only made when queries are executed. Starting with Historian 5.5, there are 2 checkboxes now for enabling the Excel add-in within Excel to enable the ribbon and additional functionality. And finally, use relative time functions such as now, today, etc. to generate relative timestamps for easier reporting. Thank you for watching, and for more information, contact us at tmmi.com.